thing. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So the story about fly swarming meat in 3.
All right, so I make it to St. Kitts. While I'm in St. Kitts, don't have a whole lot of money. Loans were not that prevalent at that point in time. I was still trying to get student loans and stuff, and if you've ever applied for those, you know that's not the easiest thing in the whole world to do. It's like jumping through fiery hoops, almost as bad as vet school. But anyway, I went to the local meat market at downtown St. Kitts, which is Basseterre, and when you go, their idea, the meat market, is basically walking in, and on the end of bent hanger rods is these chunks of meat, from lamb or whatever it was that you'd gone. Since it was my first semester of vet school, I couldn't identify the meat yet. And one thing you notice is that for every piece of meat, there's 50 to 60 flies sitting there, tasting the wares before you get a chance to. I guess if I'd asked them for more of opinion, like which one, now that I, later on I've survived many flies and a lot of bad meat, I could have looked up and said, that's got to be a good one because of flies like that one most of all. But I ended up being afraid of the local meat, so I wanted to taste more fish, but fish still cost money. And somewhere along the line, talking with one of the locals, he mentioned that he used to spearfish as a kid and said that, for the price of a small gun, even showed me how to modify them, you could actually become a pretty decent spear fisherman. So I asked my dad for some extra money, bought myself a mask, didn't have a snorkel yet, and I started out learning how to swim in 1.5 feet of water, and I got this cute little spear gun. It was about that long. It was like a spear pistol. And I found out that unless I was on top of some fish, I couldn't get it, and most of the fish are smarter than that. So I only ate small crabs, really small fish. They had these flounder there that were very beautiful, blue dots all over them, and they were so bony that you'd have to cook them, fry them so hard that crispy that someone could eat the bones because you had to eat them with bones and all. So with that in mind, you end up becoming a better spear fisherman over time. So next thing you know, my guns went from this to being as tall as you were, and pulling back the rubbers, and I'd be in the water from on the weekends, sun up to sundown, and sometimes I wouldn't touch land for 12 hours. I miss that. I really miss it.
Wow. So but how did you cook your fish? Just over fire?
Well, I had a small room, and the room had a kitchen. Okay, it took me a while to get a microwave. Matter of fact, no, the whole time I was on St. Kitts, I did not have a microwave that I can remember at this point in time. But we had an oven, had a gas stove. There were some amenities, but there just wasn't a lot. The only hamburger joints was some guy sitting on the corner, with a small 55-gallon drum cut in half and hinged, and pick it up, and you get your jerk chicken on the corner, $1 EC, and you can get a chicken leg or a chicken wing, and that's pretty much how you'd survive. That was the third world country, idea of living. But once I got good at spearfishing and coming up to shore with more fish than I needed, the locals would meet me, and I would trade stuff with them from there.
Tell me what kind of house you lived in. What was your house like?
The first house that I'd lived in while I was on St. Kitts, it was basically the under part of a larger home. There was I called it the dungeon, basically. There was a whole 3 or 4 bedroom house, and the house was built on a hill, and there was this one part underneath it that kind of faced the ocean, and I lived underneath there, except for the 2 or 3 lights. There was not a whole lot of electricity needed. I had a gas stove. I remember my water heater was one of those, you plug it into the wall and you turn the switch on, and if you wanted hot water, you let the water trickle through it really slow. If you want tepid water, you increase the water speed a little bit more, so because the longer it's in the heater element itself, the more hot your water, the less hot your water was. Anyway, I think I'm getting that correct. But it was a shanty. I lived in the dungeon. It was dark, and that was pretty much all I had. After that, one of my days I was spearfishing. There was a few girls that lived just down the road from me, about 300 or 400 feet. And one day while spearfishing, I had brought up some extra fish and some stuff, and I went to this house. I think I had a few lobster on my stringer and a few extra fish, and I offered them as a neighborly, welcome to the neighborhood thing. And at some point in time, they were like, you have to come live with us. And then one of the girls moved out, and I lived with just one of them, and that was my roommate for the rest of the time. But that was a small bricked house, cinder block built house. The walls didn't have screens. The windows didn't have screens. They just had big bars. We used to have a problem with the monkey stealing our fruit. You know, they'd come in and steal the bananas, whatever fruit you had. They'd just sneak into the bars and run out with whatever they could take. You know, so it was always a fun time trying to hide your stuff from the monkeys on the island.
What kind of monkeys were they?
They were the African green monkeys.
Okay. Word 5.